Hey, everybody, and welcome to the SafePrep show. Tonight's guest is Tabitha at the betting courts on TikTok, and she knows this is her show and not mine. And welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm
So I
doing
want
great. How
people.
about you?
I'm doing good. My back hurts, but you knew that already because we've been talking for
Yeah.
25 minutes, just getting to know each other. So I wanted to start off tonight with kind of, I think, a summary of kind of who you are and what you do. Because we want to get to know you, but I want my folks to know what's coming because your show is probably going to be several of the podcast. And I just have a suspicion that we're going to have you back at some point. So
That'd be fun.
this is from your website. It just says who we are. And who would we be?
My husband and I.
Your husband, and we're gonna throw him up in some videos here after a while too, because he's in a lot of your content, especially that
Oh, I
that
love
one.
it.
So we are
I
certified permaculturist, beekeeper, trained master gardener, food preserver, gardener, chicken keeper, chef, baker, builder of all things. We are a teacher, writer, blogger, YouTuber, and TikTok enthusiast. We share what we know in many platforms in hopes to help others on their journey. We don't take life too seriously, and we try to have fun along the path. This life is a journey with ups and downs and laughter and tears. We choose to live out loud. So, welcome to the show, and it has
thank
been
you for
nice getting
having
to
me.
know you slowly, little by little, over the past couple of weeks. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about social media and that journey, and then you're going to get to teach everybody a bunch of stuff that you know and love.
I love teaching. A little bit about myself. I'm just a crazy person. I literally am a crazy person, and I am the person that if there is a problem, I have to find the solution. So I spend most of my day trying to find a solution for it. My husband, we moved up here to the Oregon coast from California, and when we moved up here, we realized that it was cheaper for me to stay home, and he bought me 2 acres, and we wanted to start homesteading and prepping, and he bought me 2 acres. And when we couldn't get anything working because we were both working and we didn't see each other, he comes home, I come home from work one day, and he looks at me and he says, we need to talk. And I'm like, oh great. And he says, I've worked through all of our budget, and I think we can, if you can find ways of doing things with this as cheaply as possible and doing it ourselves, I think we can afford for you to stay home. And here, check this line right here. I kept your hair appointments in the budget. So I have been able to find ways for the last 13 years of creating and building a homestead. We moved on this land with nothing but a septic system. And we pulled that septic system up and moved it because it was in the wrong place. So we have literally built this whole entire land from the ground up with as little money as possible. I mean, my first garden beds were wood from the dump. And there's a picture of me out there somewhere where we pulled into the dump, we dumped our trash because we didn't have trash service at the time, and we left the dump with more than we came with. But I like learning things, and I like sharing. I love sharing. So I had social media at one time, and I was in the prepping world before, and I took it down because I was being stalked on social media and bullied, not stalked, but more bullied, actually stalked too. Um, but I was being bullied on it. And so I took everything down, trying to think I needed to save myself. And then about 3 years ago, I decided I was going to come back and I wasn't going to let anybody stop me this time. So I'm here. And then my daughter just said, Mom, you need to be on TikTok. You need to share everything on TikTok. And I started sharing on TikTok. And oh my gosh, the world has blown up. I love it.
What do you have planned for the future as far as your content goes?
Well, I signed up for an Amazon associate. I don't make any money doing this. I'm going to be doing more in YouTube. So I'm getting my YouTube channel set up, and I'm kind of making everything look the same on all platforms. So I can share on all platforms. So people will be able to see a short TikTok video and then they'll be able to go to YouTube and get more information about that same TikTok video. Right now, what they'll see is they'll see the TikTok video that I do on TikTok, and then I've just been uploading it directly to YouTube, but they'll start seeing more in-depth or more information on the YouTube channel. And then Facebook and Instagram will just be where they can, see pictures that I put up, like right when I'm doing something, I'll put a picture up and I'll share it on both platforms, and they can talk to me and interact with me, ask me questions, and I can share links on things. I mean, I find recipes on the internet, and I have absolutely no problem sharing other people's content for them. Like if the pumpkin spice latte that I made, that's not my own. So I'm not sharing it as my own. I literally posted up and shared the actual link to that pumpkin spice latte recipe, which was amazing, by the way.
So
Absolutely
before
amazing.
you didn't work, what kind of work did you do?
I was a 911 dispatcher
That's what I heard.
for the for the fifth largest city in California, and that is one of the hardest jobs in a gang-ridden city. I have seen it all. I have had it all. I was SWAT trained, so when there was a SWAT call out, I literally would go up and work the SWAT calls. I've been on some really horrible phone calls. I've been on some really horrible calls where I'm dispatching officers to, and all. I know exactly how a city can fall and how quickly it can fall.
I had asked you to be on the podcast. This is really before we knew each other, and
Mhm,
you kind of, I think you probably checked out, you like stalked me a little bit and checked out my content in
mhm,
the podcast, and then in the live you found out I was a paramedic, and you were like,
mhm.
"Oh yeah, I'll be on a podcast now."
Yep. There is something about first responders. There's something that I actually, here is something that I tell people: if you really want to know the state of the world, watch what the responders do. Because if you're watching how the first responders are living in their normal life, you will know the real world, how you should be living in the real world. Because the majority of us actually are very conscious that it's a very thin line of collapse.
Absolutely. I tell people I dispatched a little bit. I had my EMD. I was a supervisor, so I had to dispatch occasionally. Hated it. You put me in the truck, I can multitask and do 15 different things in a critical situation, but you put me in dispatch and two phones ring? Nope. So,
I love it.
but that's awesome. And the fact that you worked in a big place says a lot
Yep,
too.
yep.
So,
There
so
was
you
usually
sent,
eight. There was
go ahead.
usually 18 of us at any time down there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm blessed now. I work for a good service and they've got a good e-comms, what we call it. So you sent me an email and
Hmm.
a very long one, and it's
Ooh,
got all
sorry.
sorts of good stuff on it. No, you're good. Um, thank you. Remember, you're the energy. My back hurts. Um, let me just hit the high points, or you can look at the email too, because you've got so much to share. Now, most of your content on TikTok is it's homesteady,
Hmm.
it's canning and preservation, but I think your main message, and correct me if I'm wrong, is showing people that they can do it.
Yes. And not to live in fear. Like, we're all scared of food inflation, but we don't have to be afraid because we can literally take the food that we have and make it and stretch it. Or, like, I had a girlfriend come over and we were cooking dinner together. And I'm watching her. She's chef trained and she's throwing half the onion away. And I went back through and I'm like, oh, man, there's so much more of that food that we can use. So that's what I do. I go through and I try to figure out like what people normally would throw away. I'm going through and saying, how can I make that edible or into food, or what can I use with it? So anything that's food wise that I can't make into food, I take to my chickens and they eat it. And then they turn around and make eggs with it.
Well, that's a good segue in. I love segues, by the way, into two things. How easy and cheap it can be to be prepared because that's a lot of people's hiccup. And then permaculture. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna let you explore those topics for a little bit, and I'm gonna sit back here and learn.
Oh, sit back and so what permaculture? You said permaculture, and everything else in my brain just went out.
Did it?
Yeah, literally. Like, what you want? Let's talk permaculture, and then you stop me when you don't want to hear anymore. Briefly, everybody looks at me and they go, "What's permaculture?" Permaculture is simply permanent agriculture. So we're taking food and plants that are permanent and we're planting them in ways that they will benefit each other. So I have, and you do them in what's called guilds. So I have all of my land is being transformed into where it keeps as much water as possible. So I have when I have flat spaces and they come downhill, I tilt the flat space back to where the water runs back into where the hill was. And then it stores that water in my ground for a longer period of time. So I have certain areas on my land that I've done that to, and I never have to water them and they don't die. In the summer, we had 3 months, 2 months of absolute no rain this year. They are literally doing so well down there. I only go twice a year, and that's basically to harvest. I specialize in what's called food forests, which everything looks like it's absolutely disgusting. It looks like a massive mess of a forest. In fact, I was down there weeding, and my neighbors couldn't hear me down there. And one girl goes, "Yeah, she's a gardener." And I could hear the guy go, "That's a mess. That's not gardening." I just laughed. If he knew how much food I got out of that section of land, he probably wouldn't say that. It does look like a mess, but I can go in there and I can harvest, and I get currants, olives, figs, blackberries, raspberries, red raspberries and black raspberries, all come from that little patch of land. And then I go down in there during the spring and I'll plant tomato plants and stuff. And tomato plants actually grow really well in semi shade, and they'll just grow prolific in the area. And I'll go down there and harvest those. And I'll plant garlic and onions and stuff. So basically, permaculture, you think permanent agriculture. I plant a tree and then I'll put a ground cover. That tree will want a certain item like nitrogen or whatever. And the ground cover that I plant will go down into the ground and it will pull that up and make it available for the tree, or vice versa. And then also, so it's like a 7-tiered system. You have a ground cover, and then you have the low bushes, and then you have a bigger bush, and then you have your trees, and then you have your climbing vines that climb up the trees. Um, and everything works together. Everything gives and takes, and it's pretty much like a well-running system. And you only have to go into it about 2 times a year. Once I go in for cleanup, and once I go in for harvesting.
So you haven't just learned this by experience. Like you've had some training in the permaculture stuff, right?
Yes, I actually took the certification and became certified through permaculture. I did the pre-program and the actual permaculture program. It's fun. I did that. So here's something that I do. Everybody goes, how did you learn all of this? I didn't learn it all by, like instantaneous. Every single winter I put myself into some sort of training or learning, and I jumped into one topic. So one year I learned essential oils, all about essential oils, all about herbs and the plant properties and how to use them and stuff like that. The next year I took the master gardening program. They all flowed into each other. And I sat in a classroom and learned master gardening from some of the best teachers in the Pacific Northwest. And I say the Pacific Northwest because I think it's really important that when we're talking gardening and preparing and homesteading, that we always share the area of the country that we are in. Because the area of the country that we are in, every area has different properties and different ways that we have to do things. So, like when I lived in Fresno, I love this. I lived in Fresno. It's hot, it's dry. I prepared totally differently down there. I grew tomatoes totally differently down there. I grew lettuce totally differently. I move up here, everything is, I can't do anything. I felt like the worst gardener in the world. And when I took the class up here, they're showing me how to grow everything here, and how to store my food here. It's different for each area. So I think on our social media platforms, we need to be pretty sure that we're telling people that we're doing this. And you'll always see, like, I'll hashtag Pacific Northwest, or I'll tell people this is how I do it for my area, because there's more than one way that we can do things.
And what works for you may not work for me all the time. So
Exactly.
we can try our best to deliver that message. We still get the comments like, so. What about getting the message across to folks that a lot of the hang up is I don't have any money. And I think a lot of us are in that limited resource department right now. Recession and inflation and jobs. And one thing we try to do in our account is not overwhelm people and tell people to start small and set small goals. But as far as explaining to people that this is doable and it does not have to be expensive, what's the message that you try to
100%.
deliver?
It's 100% doable. I started by going to the dump and grabbing wood, leftover deck wood from the dump, and I built all of my raised garden beds with deck wood, trashed wood, and pallet wood. I don't really recommend pallet wood because it's really hard to get apart, and you can do some damage to your wrists, especially if you don't have really sturdy wrists, and you go through an awful lot of Sawzall blades, which are expensive. So I put out there in my Facebook account, my private Facebook account, I am always putting out there what I'm looking for. Like, does anybody have any old wood, any old building supplies? I'm not above asking for people for their garbage stuff or stuff that they don't want. I literally have a network of women in my community or people in my community that when they come across canning supplies, they will message me, hey, I have a whole bunch of canning supplies or equipment. Do you want it? And I always offer to pay for it. And they always say, oh, no, I just want to know it's going to a good home or that you'll find somebody that will use it. And I always pass it on to people that, if I can't use it, it's going to somebody in my community that is going to learn how to can. But there's all kinds of free stuff out there. Like okay, we're gonna geek out a little bit. So I had a seed shack. I told you I can talk.
Go girl. Do it.
I have a seed shack that is behind my cottage, and I do not want it behind my cottage. We just built this house that we're in, so the whole land is being redone. So I couldn't pick up that seed shack. It's 16 by 6. So I went there with a hammer and some crowbars and stuff, and I dismantled it piece by piece and carried it up to the top part of my property. Now I have a whole bunch of 2x4s and a whole bunch of old pallet wood because I built this thing with pallet wood. And all of my plastic sheets, I washed everything by hand. Things don't have to be expensive if you're willing to put the work in. I washed everything by hand, cleaned it all up, took all the nails out of all the wood, had a girlfriend a little old lady, my sweet lady, she's such a sweetheart. She's moving. She is clearing out her storage buildings. She's running across a whole bunch of building supplies and windows and all kinds of fun things. I have other people saying, hey, I have this shelving unit. Do you want it? And it's rusted and disgusting, but it's perfect for a seed shack, right? Seed shack is kind of like kind of like a greenhouse. So I took the whole thing apart. I found all of the leftover building materials from our house build and the hardy plank and everything. And I built this seed shack. You can see it on TikTok. I built the whole entire thing for under $500. I mean, and I even enlarged it. So I took all the OSB panels that they had left, all the pieces. My husband and I pieced everything together and screwed it up. And then all the 2x4s and leftover from the seed shack from down there, rebuilt it, enlarged it. I only had to buy the rafters for the roof, about 5 2x4x10s. So I built the seed shack, and now I have all these garden beds that all of my garden beds are exactly the same now, because I had all of the dump wood. You have to make the garden beds whatever size wood they are. So now I've gone back through, and as I have funds, I go back through and I'm redoing all the garden beds, and they're all the same. They're 10 feet by 30 inches wide. And why are they that way? Because I can sit in the row of garden beds and I can weed all the way to the side on this bed and all the way to the side on this bed. And that lessens my movement and my work. So I can get 2 beds weeded with going down one row, because they're short enough that I don't have to go from one side or the other, and I don't have to reach over so far that I have to put my hand in and compact the soil.
So, if people, first of all, go follow Tabitha at the Betting Courts on all of her social media accounts. I've been looking at her TikTok a lot lately, and I was talking to her earlier about, she'll be all prettied up in the TikTok video, but if you look at her fingers, you can tell she's been in the garden.
So you want to talk about gardening? When we first moved here, we were told we couldn't grow bell peppers. We couldn't grow hot peppers. We proved them wrong on both. We couldn't grow sweet potatoes. We proved them wrong. Oh, you can't grow big tomatoes. We proved them wrong. And I teach there's a program called the Seed to Supper program. And they would bring me in to teach a segment of that program, and I taught container gardening and a few other of the shows, the harvesting and stuff. And my comment to everybody is, I don't want you to go by what people in your neighborhood are telling you can't grow. I want you to try it. And if it fails the first time, I want you to try it again. And if it fails the second time, I want you to realize what you did the first 2 times and analyze all of that and keep a journal. So I have a journal for every year, which variety I've grown and such not. And if what you've tried those first 2 years, try something totally different. Like, try a different variety, try something totally different. I grow amazing tomatoes. I had the biggest hot pepper crop ever this year. I've grown sweet potatoes. I've done it all. Everything that the local people told me I couldn't do, I couldn't grow, I've done. So that's why when I stand up there and I'm talking to people and I'm telling them how to garden, they'll ask me, well, can I grow this? Because they're usually new people in the area. And I'm like, honey, don't listen to anybody. You try to grow it, figure it out.
I think that's what gardening is. This next year will be our 4th year with a garden in our yard. And we also started container gardening this fall. But that's what we do every year. Is you try. You put stuff in the ground, sun, water, and you see what happens. And my wife loves to try new stuff. I mean, she don't even look at where it normally grows before she buys it and we try it. In fact, we're doubling the size of the garden next year, and part of the garden is probably just going to be like the experimental portion. Just
nice,
weird stuff we've never even tried, but might be hanging in a disaster scenario, and my kid.
Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing that.
My 9-year-old even wants his own little private garden next year, so we expand every year. But you got to try.
Yep.
You got to try.
Yep, you do. And okay, so I placed a seed order, did a TikTok on how there were so many vegetables, so many of my seeds. Like, somebody told me there was going to be a seed shortage. And whether that's true or not, I decided I wanted to place my order ahead of time. So I went into 3 places that I order, and those places, 50% of the stuff that I would have normally ordered was gone. I still cannot find my varieties that are tried and true, productive in my area. So I had to go with other varieties, and everybody is telling me that was probably the worst. Some of the worst comments on my TikTok was I was wrong or whatever. But the problem is that those varieties that I wanted that weren't available are the ones that work best for me in my area, because 12, 13 years ago is when I started doing all the testing, ordering all the different packets and figuring out which ones worked best in my area. Like, I can't grow the mortgage lifter tomatoes, the really big ones that are huge, because they just don't ripen fast enough. And by the time they start to ripen, my growing season is almost over. But I can grow Moscovich, and I can grow Moscovich to save my life. Like, literally, I could pay off my house with the Moscovich tomatoes. Interesting thing is, Moscovich tomatoes are Russian tomatoes. So I'm going and getting the brands, the brands that were cultivated and made and do well in the cold areas of Russia, do very well in the Pacific Northwest. So when we're looking at seeds and gardening, varieties and the types really matter. Not just the actual, can I grow tomatoes or can I not grow tomatoes? It's which variety of tomatoes can I grow?
My neighbor has gardened his whole life, and he's one of those neighbors that's famous for tomatoes. And so me being a new gardener, kind of throwing them in the ground and going and buying those cheap tomato cages that just
Oh,
eventually fall over. And so next year, I'm holding that man's hand on everything he does with his tomato, you know, type and the way he uses post and fencing and tying off. Everything he does, I'm doing
I
because
hope you do videos on it.
oh, I will. I think we would have had tomatoes last year. We've had a lot of things last year, but we had a little pest issue in the garden, and we were so looking forward to canning tomatoes last year, but it just wasn't in the cards. So
Well, we were looking forward to having apples this year because last year we had so many apples. We were literally giving buckets away and begging people to come and take them. This year we had a very weird cold snap in May, which was very unusual. And we didn't have the pollination as normal. And we probably were going to get 5 to 10 gallon, 5 gallon buckets worth of apples. But we have some critter that was out there and he ate every single apple on every tree, one by one. So there'll be videos coming up of me trying to catch him.
so for those who I think most people know that you can garden in a very small space.
Mhm.
You can container garden. There's lots of ways you can do it. But for people who just need a good swift kick in the butt, why do they need to start thinking about growing some of their own food, even if on a small scale?
I think everybody should grow their own food. I think they should know where their food's coming from. Um, even if they don't know how to garden, you need to start trying because it took me 3 to 4 years to be proficient in growing my own food. Um, I think it's important because I think we're going to come to a part where there won't be, well, food is expensive. I literally went to the grocery store and the butter that I used to buy for $1.99 is $5.99 right now. So I can offset my cost of food, my cost of the butter with growing my own vegetables, and I can save money that way. Lettuce is really easy to grow, but lettuce is expensive in the grocery store. So if I can take a $1.79 pack of seeds, plant those in the ground, and one package of seeds is probably going to give me maybe $40 to $50 worth of lettuce that I would buy. And those are the ones that sprout. I mean, there's hundreds of seeds in a packet for lettuce. I can save a ton of money. I can take that money that I save using that pack of seeds and harvesting that lettuce, and I can turn around and I can use it to buy more food in the grocery store and or garden beds or things that would help me further my garden and make more food. Doesn't it really show you? I mean, isn't it? It's a blessing that we have this moment right now that we can actually try and experiment and see how it works for us, and we can learn it before it becomes like a real necessity that we
Necessity.
need it. Because it could be a necessity that we need it at some time. There's always that chance that we could need it. But isn't it amazing that we have this perfect opportunity right now that if we wanted to put carrot seeds in the ground and water them and see where they bring us, that we can. And then we can learn from the carrots and move on to radishes. I start with radishes, though. They're really easy to grow.
We started with carrots. We're going to do radishes next. Carrots did do well.
Radishes are really fun, especially for children because they are so.
Well, the older you get, your palate changes, and you're like, I'm gonna try that, and then you try it and you like it, and it's like you couldn't put a vegetable in my mouth at all when I was a child, but now I'm like, man, you pickle that, it's gonna keep, it's gonna taste delicious.
So we literally changed the way we eat. We eat what we call the 1930 diet because when I started, so I have a little pantry that I store, that I have food storage in just in case something happens, which has come in really handy for us. And what I did was I slowly would start buying. Like if somebody's like, I have absolutely no food in the house. And let me tell you why I do this. In 1989, I had a 3-month-old little girl. I came home from work. I was going to go grocery shopping and pick up a few things. We had no food in the house. I picked up the phone to call my girlfriend and tell her I'm going to be 20 minutes late because I want to go to the grocery store real quick because I had no food. I literally had no food. I pick up the phone, I look out the window, and I start hearing this semi truck, and I'm like, wow, that sounds really close. And then all of a sudden, my whole entire condo started shaking and rolling. And as I'm looking out the window, I see the high-rise building that is across the way. It was a bank building. All of the glass falling and breaking out of it. I was in the Loma Prieta quake of 1989. They said it was 8.0, but then they reduced it to 7 something. I felt it. That was the moment that night as we're all standing outside waiting for something, the electricity to come back on, the gas had been shut off. I mean, I'm in Silicon Valley. That was the moment that I looked, my baby girl is sleeping in the trunk of my car. And I looked at her and I said, this is the last time I will ever be without food because I had no food and no grocery stores and no way of feeding her. I packed her up in the car and I drove to Fresno where my mother was. I picked the flattest farmland I could find. But here's a tip that I don't think most people know. If all the phone lines are busy, you cannot get a dial tone when everybody wants to talk at the same time and during a natural disaster. So when you pick up the phone and you don't have a dial tone, all you have to do is wait. Listen with that receiver up to your ear, a plug-in phone, and you just wait 15, 20 minutes. When a line becomes available, it'll cycle into that phone. So I always, to this day, I have a phone that plugs into the wall, and I have phone service. So that's how I reached my mother. And you have to know your phone number because you can't misdial, because if you misdial, you're waiting again. There was a woman that had a phone cord with a phone out of her condo down onto her car. We all stood up on the roof of her car, and I would wait for the phone to dial. There was a line of us, and I would wait for that phone, for a dial tone to come on that phone. I called my mother. I said, I'm okay, because it was national news. She's like crying in the phone, hearing that and knowing that I'm there. I'm like, I'm okay. We're both okay. Can I come to your house? And she's like, you come in here. There's a bed for you. I got in the car. We were the last car to drive over Pacheco Pass into the Central Valley of California before they shut it. So all of the PG&E crews, the Pacific Gas and Electric, could go in to try and restore everything in the Silicon Valley. So that's the reason
I did
why
not know about the dial tone. I did not know that. Where I thought you were going, where I thought this from earlier, where I thought you were going, and a lot of people don't know this too. I know you do, but with cell phones during a disaster, if you can't talk, if you can't make a phone call on a cell phone, text, because it requires less bandwidth and data. But I knew I was going to learn some cool stuff today, so I like the dial tone thing.
Yeah.
Was that during the World? Was that during the World Series?
Yeah, 504 World Series had just started.
I was so 89. 89, I was 9, but I remember it being nothing but it was all what we saw on TV because it was during the World Series.
Yep, and it was mayhem. Literally, people were leaving their cars and trying to get home. So that's my first real experience with needing to be prepared. And that was when I said, nope, I'm never going to be without food. And I'll tell you, there were some times where I had absolutely no money. I was so poor during after this event. Um, I would have a box of Cheerios in my house, and there was a point in time where I was like, "How am I going to get food to feed my kid?" Because I didn't make a lot of money, but I worked for the county as a secretary, as a legal secretary. So I went to the library and I got all of the books on couponing because I remember my mom when I was little, she would go dumpster diving and she would clip off all of the little UPC codes and she would get all of the coupons from that came in the Sunday paper and she would come home and she'd clip everything and we would have dishes and glasses and all kinds of silverware would be given for free and money would be given to you if you turned in those UPC codes you could get like $5 and we would go grocery shopping. And I remember as a kid, her walking out of the grocery store with a full basket of food for a couple bucks that they paid us to take. Because back then, the coupon, if it was 35 cents, they'd give you the whole entire amount. So if you bought it and it was on sale for 20 cents, you'd get 35 cents. You'd get the 15-cent difference. So I used that philosophy from when I was a kid watching my mother do this. And I turned around when I was a legal secretary at the county of Fresno. And how am I going to feed my kid? Because I was scared CPS was going to come and take her away because I had no food for her. And I checked out all of the books on couponing and saving money, and I just started reading. And then I turned around and I went to all of my neighbors and grabbed all of their coupons out of their bins, their recycling bins, went home and started clipping. Now, here's the thing. I don't do that anymore. It saved me in the time that I needed to. And the reason I don't coupon shop anymore is one, I don't eat the stuff that kind of stuff anymore. And two, it's not feasible for me to do that anymore because I'm 35 minutes away from a grocery store. And when you're coupon shopping at that capacity, you have to be close to many grocery stores. So now what I do is I grow all of my own vegetables, and we've totally changed the way we eat to now I bulk buy everything. So I'll shop twice a year for the main stuff. My flour, it used to be my flour. I don't buy flour anymore because I grind my own wheat. So now I'm buying wheat berries in the 50-pound bags. I'm special ordering the different types of wheat grain. I'm buying my rice in 50-pound bags, and then I'm just storing it. I buy all of, anything that I would need. And here's the cool part about it. So I watch people when they're food prepping and they're buying the cake mixes and the brownie mixes and stuff because we all want our children not to have to experience life with brownies. But I can make brownies just as fast as anybody else can with the brownie recipe that I have with basic ingredients. And with those same staple ingredients, if I don't want to make brownies, I can turn around and make cake, or I can turn around and make crackers. I can make anything out of these same basic ingredients. It's just how you add the ingredients and what you do. Same with biscuits. I don't have biscuit dough. I don't have biscuit mixes because I can make it all with the same staple ingredients. And it's half the price of what they're paying it for in the store.
Staple ingredients, and so there's having them and knowing what to have, knowing how to store them, but then, like you said, what a blessing that we can practice now
Yes.
and learn how to make things and find recipes that work, and then be creative and think, well, what if I didn't have electricity to heat this?
Mm-hmm.
How could I use these ingredients to make that? But the staple ingredients is a big one. I want
If
to
you don't have electricity and you need bread, the easiest thing to do is to make yourself some tortillas because you can make those on a griddle over an open flame.
help me explain. Sitting here watching you talk, you're very passionate about
Mm-hmm.
this, and so passionate that you take courses and you read books, and you've been doing this for years and years and years. I try to explain to people, don't come at this from a place of fear.
No.
Treat this like a hobby, and enjoy it like a hobby and learn about it like a hobby, and it makes it fun, and it takes the fear out of it. It takes the anxiety out of it and the worry. And if you really just dive in and say, hey, this is fun for me. This also saves me some money. And the added benefit is if anything ever happens, short term or long term, we've got some stuff now, and I've got some skills, and I've got some knowledge. What do
Well,
you have to
take
add?
it from a
Go ahead.
hobby and take it from a hobby and add it into a lifestyle. So you see all these people that are saving all this food that they don't eat personally. Like, oh, well, I don't eat rice, but I'm going to store rice because I'm supposed to have this much rice for my family if when the world ends. Okay, well, that's based on fear. But if you don't eat the rice and you don't eat the beans, your body is going to have a really hard time trying to eat that stuff. So I turned around when I started realizing, you know what, I don't usually eat this stuff, but I'm saving it, like wheat berries. I had no idea what wheat berries were. I bought the hard red and the hard white, thinking that'll get me through anything. Oh, was I totally wrong. The hard red and the hard white are for baking bread, and for yeast type of products. If you want to make biscuits or cookies or something, you're going to need the soft wheat berries. So now I'm looking at things going, oh, well, I'm going to need the soft wheat berries if I want to be, like make a pastry or make flour tortillas or anything that doesn't have yeast in it. So if I hadn't started using the product, I wouldn't know what I'm supposed to have. So now that I use the product and I grind my own wheat, which I've been doing for about 6-7 years, now I know, okay, well, this is what kind of wheat berries I need, like pasta. You tell me, what kind of grain wheat berry do you need for making pasta? Right? Durum. You need durum wheat.
I know
So you need durum wheat.
I know that you were very happy that I made bread the other night in a video.
Yes.
So I acquired the automatic bread maker, and it was like 6 ingredients. It was nothing, and I finally wiped the dust off of it and made it. But there's a few things. One thing I love about preparedness and prepping is there are 17, 11 subcategories to it. So you start in one area, and then you get interested in another area, and you're like, I want to try this next. I want to learn about this. So I've talked about I want a wood stove, even if it's a small one. I just want to have one. I want I want to get my own grain mill. I want to at least have it. But some things that I need to do is I like things like bread, and you said make tortillas. Um, is learn how to do some things with an alternative cooking source. Everybody, that will do it for tonight's show, but we are far from done with Tabitha from At the Betting Courts. She will be back next Friday on podcast, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central on Facebook, YouTube, and talking about a lot of awesome topics, more on gardening and homesteading. We're also going to be talking about some subjects I think that our female audience, which is most of my audience, 70% of you right now, are going to be very interested in, and that is self-defense, situational awareness, home and homestead defense, and she's got lots of stories to tell about that I know you will want to hear. Be sure that you can check out description for all of her links, all of my links. If you guys have questions or want to email us, info@safepreptn.com, and be sure that if you're watching us on YouTube that you give us a subscribe and hit that notification bell. Tabitha, I had such an honor, such a pleasure getting to know you, and I can't wait to see you back next week. And we will definitely have her back for additional interviews and shows, but we'll see you next week again with Tabitha. Y'all have a good evening. Stay prepped.